Monday Night Raw has officially wrapped up. This is my official review. Finna go ahead and jump straight into it. First, we start off with Jey Uso. He's about to cut a promo. He ends up calling out Jimmy to the Jimmy to the ring. Jimmy then comes out. Then we end up getting Jimmy. Jimmy ends up thanking Jey for what he did last week, attacking the Bloodline, making them lose their tag team titles. And Jimmy, he all happy. He assumes that they're on good terms. He assumes that they're back. They're back being the Usos, and that they finna take out Solo and his bloodline. Jey stops him for a bit, and he was like, "It's not as simple as that." He ends up mentioning the past year, mentioning all the things that he's done, and how that if he was to go back to the Bloodline, things got to be different. That they're not going to be Roman's little yes men. They're not going to be Roman's lackeys. They're going to actually be the Usos. They're going to be their own men, and things need to be different this time. Then Jimmy comes back around. He basically agrees, but he also says that him and Roman got to squash the beef, and that he invites him to SmackDown, and then they agree. So this upcoming week, Jey will be on SmackDown. We're going to get that face-to-face, talk-to-talk dynamic between him and Roman, which should be very interesting to see how Roman will respond to all of this. But then soon after, the Solo's bloodline comes out, attacks them, but Jey and Jimmy ends up getting the upper hand, and they end up standing tall. This was an overall really good segment showing, Jimmy and Jey are back on good terms. They end up having a couple, moments backstage where they're talking, showing that they're back on good terms. But then after this, we end up getting a segment though with Sami Zayn and Jey Uso. Sami, he's confused. He's confused. He doesn't understand why Jey would go back to the bloodline, why he's talking to Jimmy. He don't understand. He's saying that, look, you're your own man now. You don't got to get involved. Like, it doesn't make sense. You're doing better without them. It doesn't make sense after everything they put you through. Why are you going back to them? Then he ends up mentioning, because he kept on saying that he doesn't understand why Jey would go back. And then Jey ends up responding, ends up telling him that he wouldn't understand because he's not family, which kind of hurts because at one point Sami was a part of the family at one point. So, but then he ends up stepping away. That's the end of the segment there. They gotta show a little dissension because they can't just have the OG bloodline come back together. That simple. They gotta cause some drama with it, which I thought was very good. But then later in the show, we end up getting a moment where Jey, Jimmy, they're talking to each other, and then Jey ends up mentioning what he said to Sami, and Jimmy ends up saying that he was going to talk to Sami about it. He couldn't find Sami, but then he eventually finds Sami, and then Jey ends up finding Jimmy, and it ends up being discovered that Sami went to go talk to Solo. It's him and Solo, and they're talking. We don't know what they're talking about, but Jey and Sami saw this, and basically Jey is it seems like he's not really messing with Sami because Jimmy afterwards ends up saying that, look, Sami can't be involved in this. It's just between us three, Jimmy, Jey, and Roman, and Jey end up agreeing. So it's very interesting to see how this story plays out because they're kind of teasing basically that Sami could potentially join Solo's bloodline. Now, I highly doubt that happens, but I do like the tease of that potentially happening, of them potentially showing that Sami and Jey not seeing eye to eye on the situation. Sami looks at it from Solo being more on the right because he still doesn't agree with Roman, because Sami also has similar history to Jey of not liking Roman to the same degree. If not, he probably hates Roman more if we're being honest. So it's very interesting to see how they play this story out, especially on SmackDown with Jey and Roman finally having a conversation about how they're going to have this interaction, how they're going to regroup, and if Roman actually ends up agreeing to the terms of treating Jey and the Usos differently than before. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this bloodline story plays out because I'm very excited to see how this all unfolds. Next, we end up getting a quick match between Ivy Nile, Zelina Vega. Ivy Nile ends up picking up a quick victory over Zelina Vega with the interference of American Made with Julius and Brutus Creed on the outside helping her out. I am interested in this feud. I think this feud can be really good between LWO and American Made. Now, I don't agree with the decision they end up making later in the show, which I don't like, but it is what it is. Let's just hope that this feud overall is good. I'm glad that Zelina Vega is on TV because I don't understand why she's not pushed more. Like, there's sometimes I don't understand what WWE does with certain people because there's certain people who just have the talent, who just have that it factor, and I don't understand why they're not pushed more. Zelina Vega is one of them who has everything you want, but I'm just glad that she's on TV. It's unfortunate she took the loss, but she was protected in the loss, so understandable. But overall, I'm excited to see what this feud makes up because we have talented people. Hopefully, they just get booked right and get used properly. Now we end up getting the most, yeah, I would say the most exciting thing that's going to happen on Crown Jewel, which is Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins comes out, he was cutting a promo, but then he ends up getting interrupted by Bronson Reed. Bronson Reed ends up saying that he would come out and attack Seth Rollins in that ring, but he promised Adam Pearce that he couldn't, so he invites him to the parking lot. Seth Rollins runs down, he goes to the parking lot, and they brawl. They just brawl. It's complete chaos. They're going back and forth. Seth Rollins was getting the upper hand eventually. He ended up hitting a curb stop on the hood of the car onto Bronson Reed. We assumed that it was just over from there. From there, I thought it was over. But then Bronson Reed gets up like 5 seconds later, takes out security, and then him and Seth Rollins start going back and forth, back and forth. But then it gets to a moment where Seth Rollins is inside of a truck. Bronson Reed throws like a trash can inside towards Seth Rollins. Then he ends up going inside the truck, picks up Seth Rollins, and ends up body slamming Seth Rollins through a table, and that's the end of the segment there. This was great. This whole thing of Bronson Reed constantly causing havoc on Monday Night Raw is amazing. Now, I will say this. I like that Bronson Reed looked dominant, but I also hate that he looked dominant because if you guys know anything about go-home shows, is that basically whoever stands tall on the go-home show and whenever they have a pay-per-view, that person loses. So in my predictions video, which I'm going to drop very soon, Bronson Reed is losing. This kind of confirms it for me. Now, they could pull a swerve, but for me, this basically confirms it. I think Bronson Reed should win the match, but based on this go-home show, it looks like that he probably going to lose. But overall, this was an amazing segment. I can't wait for that match at Crown Jewel. We end up getting a quick segment with the Miz and R-Truth. The Miz is scared. He's terrified, and he doesn't want anything to do with Karrion Kross in the Final Testament. He don't want anything to do with the Y6, so he's trying to amend his wrongs with R-Truth. He apologized, talked about how he wasn't in the right headspace, and he basically wants to get back, reform Awesome Truth. It looked like R-Truth was going to forgive him. They end up doing a little dance or whatever, but then R-Truth ends up slapping the Miz, attacking him, and ends up saying that good luck with the Wyatts. And he ends up saying that they're basically going to get destroyed. And he ends up leaving, which I thought was hilarious. Then afterwards, we end up getting another segment where the Miz, where Karrion Kross was trying to come up with a game plan for the Miz to see why is the Y6 attacking him. But the Miz wasn't agreeing with it. But then Karrion Kross basically says that, look, if you don't follow this plan, we're going to basically destroy you. We're going to end your career, basically, type stuff, which I actually love. It made Karrion Kross come off threatening, like an actual force to be reckoned with, which I actually like. I'm hoping that this story gets him over because Karrion Kross is actually talented. Like, he actually is good. Like, he's actually good. I hope this gets him over. I hope this whole storyline gets him over. I'm excited to see what's next to come with the Wyatts and the Final Testament. They're probably going to most likely lose this feud. I just don't see the Y6 losing. But overall, I'm excited and I'm very interested in this storyline. Now we get what I think was a terrible decision of the show. We get the #1 contendership match to see who will face JD and Finn Balor for the tag team titles. It's between the New Day, the War Raiders, and LWO. Basically, towards the end of the match, Chad Gable interferes in the match, costing LWO the match, which allowed the War Raiders to win. Okay, I don't like this decision for one reason. Because with the War Raiders winning, that proves that JD and Finn are going to win because, in my opinion, I think the War Raiders are heels. You're not going to have a heel faction beat the Judgment Day. So, off rip, that tells me everything. We needed the New Day or LWO to win. In my opinion, LWO should have won, beat the Judgment Day. And then guess what? You could have had this feud between American Made and LWO for the tag titles. That could have been an easy story. But no, we have to force this storyline with the Judgment Day for whatever reason, because Finn Balor and JD needs the tag titles. If we're being honest, I will argue that Solo's Bloodline needed the are more important for the tag division than JD and Finn. I don't understand why they have them. I don't get it. It doesn't enhance the story at all. I don't understand it. And I was praying that, hey, they took the titles off the Bloodline. They may do the same with Judgment Day, but no, they're going to continue to have the titles, do nothing with them, have no importance. This was just a bad decision. You could have just easily done the LWO American Made feud with the tag titles. That would have been perfect. But no, for some weird reason, Triple H sees something that I'm not seeing with the Judgment Day. But We'll just have to see how this plays out, but most likely Judgment Day are going to retain, and that's really it. Then we end up getting the main event, which I'm not going to speak too much. Damian Priest versus Dominic Mysterio. It was very obvious that Dominic was going to face Damian because they said former world champion. That was very vague. It was very obvious he was going to face Damian Priest. Dominic picked up the victory with shenanigans, of course. And then after the match, Damian basically constantly attacked Dominic Mysterio. I would say this. I think this was stupid because we already know that Dominic isn't going to beat Gunther at all. So I don't understand why they did this whole World Heavyweight Championship thing. Now, you could do the whole dissension between Finn and Dominic, which I'm cool with, but I didn't think you need to go this route. Also, too, please tell me that Damian Priest is not back with this Judgment Day stuff. Do not do that, because I thought that Finn Balor was going to come out and attack Damian, but that didn't happen. So I hope he's not back in the Judgment Day stuff. Other than that, this was whatever, but I hope they do not put him back in that Judgment Day shenanigans, Judgment Day feud. Please do not put him back in there. But overall, this was a really good episode of Monday Night Raw. I'm very excited to see what they come up with next. But you guys let me know your opinions down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. But yeah, that's it.